Less wrong posts?
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
Our first one was policy debates should not appear one-sided, which I know we've talked about explicitly at least twice. So we can. I want to go over it again because it's one of the best posts. Well, it's hard to pick the best. If I was making a list of top 10, it would definitely make it. Let's put it that way.
Agreed. And it's really relevant.
Yeah. It's really relevant. It was relevant more than 2 years ago, though, too, before everything went crazy and policy debates were super one-sided. So the idea is that Robin Hanson had this kind of thought experiment of the black market store or something.
The banned things store.
That's right, yeah.
We've talked about this more than once on the podcast.
Yeah. And so the idea you can go in and buy guns, poisons, whatever, fake drugs, real drugs, anything.
Things that have been... I'm not sure about guns necessarily. Not things that are illegal, but things that have been banned for, safety reasons or whatever.
Things that would protect you from yourself.
Yes. Any law that's designed to protect you from yourself, you could go ahead and buy it at the store.
Cool.
Like, you couldn't go in there and buy rocket launchers.
I'm pretty sure that's why I can't have a rocket launcher, right?
No, that's to protect other people from you.
All right, fair enough. Yudkowsky just pointed out that some poor, honest, not overwhelmingly educated mother of 5 is going to walk into one of these stores and buy a Dr. Snake Oil sulfuric acid drink for her arthritis and die, leaving her orphans to weep on national television. People took this as like I'm against this for this reason.
Yeah.
Here's my heart-wrenching example, thought experiment of why this is a bad idea. And I'm not sure if this is Eliezer at this point when he made that argument failing to model other humans, or just maybe his audience, or maybe it was deliberate setup to make this awesome post. I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah, I'd lean more towards the latter.
Me too. He's playing one level higher than us, right? So his thing was like, no, I was making a simple factual observation. Why did some people think this was an argument in favor of regulation?
Right.
It's like, well, because you're talking about orphans and dead nice moms and stuff.
Yeah.
This is the line that maybe top 5 slogans of the sequences. It might be: politics is the mind killer. Arguments are soldiers. The costs and drawbacks of your favored policy are enemy soldiers to be attacked by any means necessary.
So pointing out that your policy, even if you really like it, has a drawback is something you can't do. You must attack that.
Yeah. And you see this if you make any argument that, and we've talked about this before. I know I keep saying that and then talking about it again, but I'll stop apologizing then for talking about it again. I'm trying to think of anything that I haven't used before. Guns or drugs, speed limits. What's
about like a energy supplement that might give you a heart attack? I guess that's a drug.
No, but that's a good example because like ephedra has been banned on and off. It seems like a few times in this country, and there's still some form of legal way to get it. But yeah, basically people take enough and their hearts would explode and they would die. So someone who's in favor of that might say, "Look, it gives me energy. I understand the danger," and I'm trying to find a good argument to shoot in the back here, I guess, of saying like, yeah, sure, have it, but somebody's going to get killed, right?
Yeah, for all the people that are actually using it in the correct dosage and cycling it and whatever you might have to do, there's people that are taking it with 5 other things, with like coffee and then like 2 beers and then going to the gym and just grinding it up and snorting it.
Yeah, you can't stop them. I mean, I remember years ago they were selling crystallized caffeine on thinkgeek.com, where you could buy all those cool nerdy things.
Yeah, they sold a lot of caffeine related products,
which is cool because nerds are tired and we need all the caffeine we can get. But I was just thinking,
it got to the point where it was abusive.
Well, that's my point. Is like the first time when I saw the salt shaker full of caffeine crystals, I'm like, some kid is going to post a video of himself crushing that and doing a line of it on YouTube.
Oh, God.
And when it comes out that 3 minutes later that kid died, they're going to take this thing off the market. Was the first thing I thought of. I don't think I'm arguing against or in favor of regulation there. I was just pointing out that like some kid's going to die doing this. Yeah. It was a much less sophisticated version. It wasn't even related. It was just the thought that like, yeah, some kid's going to die taking that stuff.
There are some people that are way too proud of their caffeine habit. And I'm like, dude, it's a problem. Don't be that proud of it.
I've never been, I guess I've met those people. Yeah, it's like, oh, I need my 3 cups in the morning. I definitely know that guy, actually. I'm thinking of one guy at work. But I happen to have a caffeine dependency. I'm not proud of it. It's just like, it sucks, but I need when next long vacation, I'll wean myself off of it like I always do. But that's just how it goes after the months at work. It's like, all right, one caffeine pill, one extended release caffeine pill used to be enough. Now it's a cup of green tea in the morning too. All right, now it's a cup of black tea in the morning and a cup of green tea at lunch. And now it's 2 tea bags of chai in the morning.
Progressing up the colors of tea.
Exactly, yeah.
Eliezer basically says, well, he asks in the post, why do we want our policy debates to be one-sided? And actually answers it, like, because we didn't evolve to go into political discussions rationally. That's not how our brains work. I remember this being pretty eye-opening for me when I first read it. Because previously, if someone had asked, I would have said, of course, policy debates should be one-sided, because they're the same as questions of fact. After all, you can do science on policy, propose a new policy idea, defend it with evidence of how well a similar policy worked before, lay out the pros and cons, and then make a rational choice. And then you can do it and study it and see how well it's doing, and then maybe update in favor of it, of keeping it or changing it. But of course, Eliezer's right here. First of all, most people would just never think of policy as something that can or should be treated like science. And I wish I could remember the name of it. I was trying to Google this before the show, but Scott had wrote an essay about this thought experiment where what if we divided elections into the fun elections, which are about status things, like, you know, which colors do we get to wear and who gets to, like, be on TV, and then, like, about, like, serious policy things. And, like you pointed out, a lot of policy is actually about determining which side gets the status and the respect instead of what is the best choice here, or, like, you know, what is going to benefit the most number of people. Which side is right can be a matter of which values and ethics you have. You know, who you think deserves respect, you can't really study that.
I like that Eliezer also pointed out in this post that there's some people that will think that, well, you just got to be tough. If someone went ahead and got that and then died from it, it's their own damn fault. They shouldn't have been so stupid. They were using a dangerous product. They didn't do their research. They deserve to get hurt. And Eliezer says that saying that is not being tough-minded.
I've definitely heard that argument in real life.
Yeah.
Whenever people talk about, you know, the downside of guns is that people use them to get killed.
Right.
Or, let me rephrase that. People get killed on accident, or they kill somebody else on purpose. And or, you know, if someone is being an idiot, I can think of interesting examples. But, well, actually, this is a good one. I can't dig it up because I wouldn't even know what to Google, but it was somebody, the passenger was taping it. They were driving back from like they'd picked up their guns and they're waving them around the car. And this was like, you know, fuck you, Obama kind of stuff.
Oh, no.
And the person shot I forget whether the driver was brandishing the gun and shot the passenger or the passenger shot the driver, but I think they crashed, and I'm not sure, they must have lived because someone posted the video. So someone definitely would have said about that incident, well, they're just fucking dumb. They deserved it. And I'm sorry, but I wanted to direct that this isn't a straw man. This isn't this is an argument that real people make all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
I would even...
I've heard this a lot, too.
Yeah, I know some people who, if you told them the dead mom story, they would be like, well, you know, that was her fault. Like, not my problem. Yeah, she didn't read the warnings or whatever. And it's kind of like, you do have to have some empathy for people up to a point. You don't know their story.
Yeah, those
Like-
stupid orphans should have been smarter and had a smarter mom, right?
Yeah, they specifically said, like, this is an uneducated woman. She's probably, like, impoverished. Like, again, I don't know what her backstory is or whatever, but, like, she's in pain from arthritis and she didn't know which thing to take.
Yeah, Eliezer says that is not being tough-minded. That's just closing your eyes and refusing to live in an unfair universe, pretending that it is fair, that they deserved it, right? That real tough-mindedness is saying, yes, sulfuric acid is a horrible, painful death, and no, that mother of five didn't deserve it, but we're going to keep the shops open anyway because we did this cost-benefit calculation. And he asks, can you see a politician saying that? And no, I cannot. Because it's really hard to say, yes, this person died, and they didn't deserve it, and it's horrible, but the benefits outweigh the cost of that person dying, and people like them dying occasionally. Because
Yeah.
that is... How the hell do you say that, like, in front of cameras? You would be eviscerated.
Well, and he puts a finer point on this for a real life example in the next post with speed limits. And it's, you know, I think the speed limit between here and Fort Collins, which I take at least once a month, is 75 miles an hour when you get to like the real part of the interstate, not going through the city. I pass an accident at least half the trips. I usually travel more on the holidays, and then I've passed 3 or 4 on the same trip. Especially when it's snowy out or something, right? If it was against a lot of manufactured cars that went over 50 miles an hour, accidents would plummet. And yet that would never fly, right? Because we've done this, we as in nobody, has done this cost-benefit analysis of saying we'd rather go faster than live longer.
The market has decided,
Yeah, I guess, right?
as the next essay would say.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, good point.
Actually, before we move on to the next one, can I quote his ending lines from this one, which I found just inspirational as all fuck?
Absolutely. I didn't want to push on. And I had one more thing to say on this too before
Yeah,
that last line. Which
I still
was,
wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah,
Okay,
I just
cool.
saw a good.
I thought we were moving on.
I saw a good teaser there. Sorry.
All right, no problem.
Just to hit that beat of, you know, people who buy dangerous products are stupid and deserve to get hurt isn't tough-minded. That's refusing to deal with living in an unfair universe. I mean, if that landed right away and everyone got it, then good. It took me a couple of readings to like really have that sink in. That like, you're right. If I feel like it's okay because it happened, I'm not really facing it.
It's pretending that the universe is just.
Yeah, and maybe it was when I read the next post that's the whole next post is about that point.
Yeah, I think it's kind of protecting yourself too. Like, oh well, that could never happen to me because I would never be that stupid.
Right.
Yeah, that too, and protecting yourself emotionally from the fact that like, you know, if you acknowledge how bad things are, then it hurts, right?
Yeah, or like that could have been my mom.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, not the same as this mom of 5 dying of sulfuric acid poisoning, but my grandma got scammed by some computer con artists a couple years ago. Only like $160, but that's a very substantial part of her income, or of her money. Yeah. And I was furious. I'm not a violent person, but I had fantasies about like tying this person to a chair and breaking their legs. Like this was just, someone defrauded my poor old grandmother. She's in her 80s. She has.
And how do you justify that to yourself? I'm just going to steal this money from this grandma.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. So
I think
now
you
that we're
say,
all...
oh, she was stupid enough to fall for my scam.
That's enough to push a grandma into a fast reproductive strategy.
That's enough to make me give you a sidelong look, even though all you did was model them correctly, I think, Jess. I'm like, fuck you for a second. But that's a job well done. And I've already forgiven you because I realized you were just making a very good point.
I won't make fun of your grandma again.
Thank you. She's a sweetheart.
Even pretending to be a scammer. Yeah, I have to admit I struggle with the ethics of permissiveness. While it seems obvious that there should be laws preventing people from harming others, I've really swung back and forth throughout my life about whether it's right to have laws protecting people from themselves. I mean, seatbelts is a great example. That's the one I was going to bring up too. There's a seatbelt law, and if you don't wear your seatbelt, basically the only person who's going to suffer is you. But there's still a law about it. I worked in volunteer EMS for a couple of years, and I started working right at the point where seatbelt technology had gotten really good. The people that had been in EMS for a really long time kept commenting on how fewer deaths there were, or really terrible injuries. I hadn't seen it before, but it used to be.
Before?
Yeah, the technology got a lot better, and a lot of technology in cars got better.
But it's just a belt. How is that hard technology?
There's engineering. And
wait, was it this podcast or was it something else I was listening to about how seatbelts were designed by men of average stature? And it turns out that if they're going around a woman's form, the older models would just snap their necks.
Oh,
not every time, but it was way more likely because none of the crash test dummies had a female figure.
That certainly wasn't our podcast.
No, you're right. I'm thinking this was on Reddit somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, although it makes perfect sense. I'm 5'3", and seatbelts don't fit me correctly. For a while, I had to wear one of those completely humiliating things that adjusts your seatbelt smaller. But now I just have a Korean car, and it's
problem
great.
solved.
What was I talking about? When I think about it from a personal perspective, I'd still like to have someone out there smarter than me making guidelines. Scientists say, this food is unhealthy and recommend not eating it for these reasons. And then I could read the paper and choose what to do for myself.
Right. You could go to the banned food store.
Yeah, for that to be an effective method, you have to have access to the scientists' recommendations and the education necessary to understand why you should listen to them, which goes back to the whole unfairness of it all, because you can make a law banning the Dr. Snake's snake oil, or you could have lots of warnings on the label. They brought that up in the essay too. This might kill you, and they might train the staff in the store to, I really recommend against you taking this for these reasons, but...
This is also why we need to avoid label creep. If you start putting a label for everything, people just stop paying attention to the labels because it doesn't give you any information. That, in my opinion, that's the one really good argument against slapping "this is a GMO" labels on things, because it doesn't matter and it makes all the other labels less valuable. Nowadays, when you buy a prescription bottle, do you look at any of the labels at all?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Most people don't.
We're savvy consumers, but the rest of it, on average...
I don't. Every single medication causes dizziness. Yes, I know. Why is that a label on this thing? Especially because in 98% of people, it doesn't actually cause dizziness.
Yeah, I was going to use the GMO example thing, too, because it dilutes... Yeah, exactly.
Once you get the feeling that most of these labels are inapplicable and are just kind of there because of bureaucracy and to cover someone's ass, you stop paying attention to them.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think the point this essay is trying to make is that in the course of raising the sanity waterline, we need to recognize and not flinch from the fact that the far greater benefits of promoting individual liberty doesn't cancel out the fact that there'll still be costs, which will include sad things like dead moms. But the dead mom example does really upset me, which I think was the point. It makes me kind of mad that we as a species get so busy fighting about politics that we prevent ourselves from trying to do better. taking the banned items store example, I could imagine a world where the blue and the green party are fighting over, like, harmful things should be banned, and individual liberty must be promoted. And meanwhile, the uneducated dead mom never had a chance because she was uneducated. And we actually live in a world where harmful things are banned, but you can still choose to kill yourself by going to a faith healer or using homeopathic medicine, instead of opting to use science-based medicine. And maybe if politicians really cared about preventing dead moms, they'd be focusing on making education and science-based healthcare more accessible.
That's something I could see a politician saying with a bit of politicizing to the phrasing, right?
Yeah,
Like
you'd have to change the science-based medicine, probably.
Consumer protection through education, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not going to tell you guys what to do. We're going to just tell you what we know. And we're going to institute programs that'll better our schools, flags, children, Bibles, I don't know. All the other stuff politicians say. But no, I like that analysis a lot. I feel like I put myself down, but it's really not. I'm not an in-depth enough reader to have gotten that deep of an analysis out of it. So I appreciated that. Thank you.
Well, I had to think about it a lot, too, because I just kept going back to the dead mom example and why it bothered me, and then I had to tease that out.
What was your badass quote you wanted to shut on, or close this one on?
He Eliezer ends this saying, "It's not always helping people to save them from the consequences of their own actions, but I draw a moral line at capital punishment. If you're dead, you can't learn from your mistakes. Unfortunately, the universe doesn't agree with me. We'll see which one of us is still standing when this is over."
I liked that one a lot, too.
That is such a badass Harry Potter, James Evans Vera sort of quote.
I love that ending.
I think when I was learning moral philosophy and trying to decide what my opinions were on things, and I've showed lots of them since, but one of them was capital punishment. I didn't really have a good grounding on. Like, to me, as a kid, it kind of made sense. Like, let's kill the bad people. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I think I was sufficiently utilitarian to be against it. But this might have given me my one sentence, and I've used this sentence to argue against capital punishment in the last few years, or in the whatever years since I've read this, which is like, if you're dead, you can't get better. Prison system aside, whatever, how bad it is, how expensive, whatever. If there's no hope for you to ever become a better person, that's the biggest tragedy there is, right? So, speaking of tragic universes,
Birch's Law is our next less wrong post.
All right.
The law is a quote from a guy named Birch. He was talking about SUVs. He says, "I think people should have a right to be stupid, and if they have that right, the market's going to respond by supplying as much stupidity as can be sold." Eliezer says, "Birch's Law is a special case of a more general rule. Just because your ethics require an action doesn't mean the universe will exempt you from the consequences. If the universe were fair, like a sympathetic human, the universe would understand that you had overriding ethical reasons for your action and would exempt you from the usual penalties. The judge would say justifiable homicide instead of murder and exempt you from the usual prison term. Well, the universe isn't fair and won't exempt you from the consequences."
That was always my thing. And this is kind of maybe part of the transhumanist manifesto, but the punishments seem to really outweigh the crimes in the universe. For 1 second, I was checking my phone and then I get plowed over by a bus. Yeah. Like, that's hardly fair. I'm usually very attentive, right?
Or, I'm a peasant in the 16th century who hasn't invented the smallpox vaccine. Now I get to die of smallpox.
Yeah.
Thanks, universe.
It's just that the punishment scale is so severe in Reality 1.0 that I like the inspirational message from the last one. Like, all right, fine, we'll see which one of us is still here.
Yeah, it's also decoupled from, to some extent, what you did wrong. I mean, like, in a just universe, there would be karma as well, where if you did good things would happen, and bad things would happen, but...
That would be dope.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent it does, but only to the extent that you're either, like, building things that pay you back later, or, doing good things, and then the people that you helped are helping you in return, and vice versa, but, like, only to an extent. Yeah, the universe isn't doing any of that, and it doesn't care, what you did while no one's watching.
Yeah. Right, no, that's a good point. If the people are around, like you said, there was somebody I know he's been wheelchair bound for 35 years. He's got limited use of his hands, like enough to be online and I think do some online gaming. But he was driving a drunk friend home and got hit by, I think, somebody who, ran a red light or something. Whatever it was, like this guy went out to go stop his friend from driving drunk and he's been in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Yeah, so it should be nice if, like, instead of that, he, like, found $50 the next day. But
or something commensurate to being hit by a bus, like something really awesome.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, right. So I guess I was trying to think of. I was thinking of something commensurate to like picking up a friend, right?
Right.
So Yeah, it'd be kind of cool if, I don't know, he realized he was, whatever, sitting on top of an oil well or something.
I do like that the example he picked is where we were literally just talking about people have a right to be stupid. We cannot interfere with everyone's lives to that extent. And then the very next post is pointing out, yeah, if you really believe that and you're going to stick to your ethical principles, the market's going to sell people all these SUVs.
Or homeopathic remedies.
Or homeopathic remedies, yeah. Like, you can't escape the consequences of sticking with your ethical views here.
Yeah.
As much as you don't want it to result in homeopathy, that's what you're going to get. So
well, that's why
make sure you're good with those ethics.
Yeah, that's why we should have classes in school that teach you that homeopathy doesn't work and that faith healing doesn't work. And this is, they don't explicitly do that. Maybe they do now. They probably don't.
They don't.
not.
At least, it depends. Maybe if you get a nice private school education or something, but...
I feel like
And even
private
then,
school
they can't,
tends to
teach you about every single thing that is going to be predating on ignorance like that. There's just too many of
But
them.
it's school. That's what they're supposed to do.
Who knew about Nigerian prince scams when we were in school, right?
We know about them now.
Yeah, I mean, you do know about them now, but...
Well, they should
I
teach
might have
about
gotten
that.
some cursory guarding against internet scams when I was in school.
Oh, did you?
If I
Just
didn't-
like, don't talk to strangers.
I got it from somewhere.
Okay.
Um,
The internet wasn't really a big thing yet when I was in school.
No,
Certainly there were no Nigerian princes yet.
it was budding when I was in school too. I mean there was this was right around the birth of Wikipedia maybe. So in any case, yeah, I'm torn on this, right? So like here's another good quote to pull out here, which was like, we don't send automobile manufacturers to jail, even though manufactured cars kill an estimated 1.2 million people per year worldwide, roughly 2% of the death rate. If you're going to do the response from the first post, well, those idiots should drive better. He very quickly points out, not everyone who dies in an automobile accident is someone who decided to drive the car. The tally of casualties includes pedestrians. It includes passengers. It includes the people you hit in the other cars, right? So, like, really all you and I are guilty of if we get hit by a car is being dumb enough to live in a society that has cars. And that's to really try and, swallow the pill of, well, all the victims are stupid is getting harder and harder as the bodies pile up, right?
Yeah, we have so many cars in America because we value individual freedom so much.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Sensible countries have trains.
Yeah, he has this line in here. He's like, well, oh yeah, it includes minor children who had to be pushed screaming into a car on the way to school. He's good at, driving home those emotional beats. But he says, and yet we still manufacture automobiles because, well, we're in a hurry. And you're right, it should be nice if we had, easy access to transportation or something. In fact, even in Denver, they're raising the rates for the light rail. Not much, but it's going to be like
Man.
$7 or $8 for a day pass instead of $5.80. So almost the cost of a Lyft, or a little under the cost of a car. But that's just kind of an aside. That you'd be nice if it was going the other way, and we're getting more towards free transportation. That's again, I like how even he is here. Quote, I don't even disagree with this decision to drive cars. Yeah, I drive a car myself. The point is that the consequences don't change no matter how good the ethical justifications sound. People who die in automobile accidents are still dead. End quote. I guess I'm now more hemming and hawing on the distinction you brought up from the last post. Like, it super pisses me off that I could be killed because someone else says I have the right to be an idiot, right?
Right.
Like, cool, you can buy all the homeopathy you want, but you shouldn't be allowed to drive a car that's big enough to, kill 3 cars for the people in front of you on the highway, and yet you are.
Yeah, the comments of this Less Wrong post kind of devolved for a bit into an argument about whether SUVs are particularly unethical.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the safety. I know that all I know is that my fiance drives a Forester, and when my previous car was totaled by a Forester, the guy who hit me cracked his license plate cover, and he was completely fine. I don't think he needed to take his car to the shop, and my car was destroyed. So that SUV seems like a great safety choice for him. Not so great for me. I turned out to be fine because he hit the back of my car, but I know this is the essence of liberty, so we're not going to solve this dilemma at the end of our show, but I don't really know how to come down. The John Stuart Mill's, on liberty quote was, my freedom to swing my fist ends where your face begins. It sure is nice when you put it that neatly, but if I don't know where my fist is and I can't quite see your face, how do I know if what I'm doing is impacting other people, right?
Yeah, who's to blame? But
Yeah.
is it the car manufacturers? Is it the civil engineers who didn't design the roads to be as safe as they could be? Is it the individual driver?
So you put the blame where you can, and if the driver was clearly doing something wrong, then you blame them. If the car was defective, you blame the manufacturer.
So the fact that fucking God put us in these flimsy meat suits instead of indestructible golem
God damn
bodies.
it, God.
If we could take God to court, we certainly would have by now, right?
Yep.
Yes, I guess the takeaway is to take it easy until you can upgrade out of your flimsy meat suit and get some cool, shiny metal suit.
Or at least we get self-driving cars.
Yeah, that's the shorter term goal, maybe. Self-driving cars, get that
Trains.
death rate way down. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So who is Greg Birch? There's a link
No
in
idea.
the post which leads to an empty this domain may be for sale page. So I'm assuming he is the guy who had a blog at some point.
We should jump on that domain.
Yeah, and I also don't see this one brought up very much, especially compared to the post we talked about before. The debate shouldn't be one-sided. Why do you think that is? Like, usually when things have a cool name like Birch's Law, they get brought up.
I have no idea.
I think because he coined it and it didn't take off.
Well, he coined a lot of things which it did take off.
Yeah, but this
You
one
never
just maybe
really
didn't
know.
catch traction.
Yeah, which
Also-
one will or won't.
And like this one's not as succinct as some of the other things, right? Like people have a right to be stupid, and if they do, the market's going to respond by supplying as much stupidity as can be sold.
That's pretty succinct, actually.
It's succinct to like us, but it's not as succinct as like Occam's razor or Hanlon's razor or something that you can summarize to a non-rationalist, and they don't have to understand markets or anything like that, right?
Even in the rationality sphere, I don't see this one brought up, though.
That's true.
And maybe because it's really depressing. To think
Maybe.
that you stick to your principles and the market's still going to fuck you because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it could just be random, too, which things ended up
Right.
getting quoted.
He does end it with saying we can suspend the jail penalty, but we can't suspend the laws of physics. Humanity hasn't had much luck suspending the laws of economics either, which is a bit of a recurring theme throughout the sequences, that economics is pretty darn important and we understand a fair bit of it, and you aren't going to stop economic things from happening,
Yeah.
like the market supplying stupidity, if you allow that.
And maybe it's not a good idea, too, either. There might be an argument to be made that the positive externalities of having cars outweighs the negative. I don't know that I wouldn't endorse that, but I haven't done the math.
I almost would. I don't know. I only know, at my office anyway, one person who walks to work. No, it used to be two. So maybe there's, of the 200 people that work in maybe 3% of them walk to work, right?
Well, all of
But-
us own cars, right?
Yeah, well, except for actually one of them doesn't. Because
Oh, okay. So
I
except
live
for
near
him.
work. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he lives near work, he lives near a store, so he's got his stuff figured out. But yeah, the rest of us have cars, and one large benefit is that like I can work somewhere that's more than a few miles away.
Yeah, we have mobility.
Yeah.
I
And
think anyone who owns a car has kind of revealed where they fall on this.
well, what you do and what you want might be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to keep us going here, but like I have a car because it would be radically inconvenient for me not to.
Right.
And not because I think that they're great and everyone should have them, but because
You're willing to risk your own death and the death of others for the convenience it provides, especially because it's such a small risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I try to mitigate that risk as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
I do try to be a good driver. Driving's one of those things that for some reason feels like an intensely personal thing to attack somebody on their skill of how good they are.
Okay.
Like I think that I couldn't dig this up. It's been 10, 15 years since I read this, but attacking someone's ability to drive is taken like deeply personally, like attacking like their sense of fashion or their
Intelligence.
their intelligence. It's like
Wow.
if you say you're a bad driver, people take that personally. Like you have a bad sense of humor, you have a bad sense of beauty or something.
On the flip side, everyone rates themselves as being an above-average driver.
That's exactly that's on the same side. Not even right. People think that they're great at it, because if they're not, they see that as like a personal attack.
That's weird.
Yeah. Anyway,
Our less wrong posts for next time are The Scales of Justice, The Notebook of Rationality, that's one, and Blue or Green on Regulation. And we will have links for it at thebayesianconspiracy.com.